Let me tell you something important. If you don't plan your financial future, you are planning to struggle. And struggling at 25 is one thing, but struggling at 65, when energy is low and opportunities shrink, is a different story. I made a decision early. I didn't want to end up broke when I should have been enjoying the fruit of my life's labor. So I learned, I studied, and I practiced what I now call my 7 money rules. These rules didn't just help me. They saved me. The first thing I learned was the importance of paying myself first. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But most people work hard, get paid, and the first thing they do is pay everybody else. The landlord, the supermarket, the phone company. And when the month ends, there's nothing left for them. I flipped it. Every time I earned $1, I kept a part of it. 10% minimum, sometimes more. That money became the seed of my future wealth. You have to honor yourself first. Second, I realized I had to master the basics of budgeting. I had to stop acting like my income was infinite. You can't spend like you're rich when you're trying to get rich. So I wrote it down. Every dollar in, every dollar out. I became aware. And awareness is powerful because once you know where your money goes, you can tell it where to go instead. Third rule, avoid bad debt like it's poison. Because it is. Not all debt is bad, but when you're using credit to buy things that don't increase in value, you're digging a hole. And you can't climb out of a hole by continuing to dig. I used to say the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken. Don't let debt become your chain. Next, I learned to invest early. Time is your greatest ally. Even small amounts grow into large sums if given enough time. Compound interest is like a snowball rolling down a hill, but it needs a push and it needs time. I didn't wait until everything was perfect. I started small, but I started. That's the key. Start. Rule number 5, never rely on one source of income. I had my main work, sure, but I also looked for ways to make money on the side. A small business, a few investments, multiple streams. If one dried up, I wasn't panicking. I was protected. You can't be truly secure if your entire life depends on one paycheck. Sixth, I surrounded myself with people who were better with money than I was. Your environment matters. If everyone around you is broke or careless with money, chances are you'll be the same. But if you walk with the wise, you become wise. I listened. I asked questions. I studied successful people. Their habits, their mindsets, their rules became mine. And finally, perhaps the most powerful rule, I stay generous. Now you might ask, how can giving help you stay rich? It sounds backwards, but giving trains your heart not to be controlled by money. When you give, you prove that you have enough. It shifts your mindset from scarcity to abundance. And that mindset alone can unlock opportunities you never imagined. So let me wrap this up. It's not the big things we do once in a while that change our future. It's the small disciplines we practice every day. These 7 rules saved me, not just financially, but mentally and emotionally. And at 65, I wasn't broke. I was free. And freedom, let me tell you, is the greatest wealth of all. When I first began to understand the difference between getting by and building wealth, I came across a principle so simple it almost sounded too easy to work. Pay yourself first. But as I applied it, I discovered it was not only powerful, it was life-changing. Most people don't pay themselves anything. They work 40, 50, sometimes 60 hours a week, and as soon as they receive their paycheck, it disappears. The landlord gets their share, the grocery store gets theirs, the electric company, the phone company, and by the time you get to yourself, there's nothing left. And people wonder why. After working for 30 years, they have nothing to show for it. I decided that if I was going to work that hard, I deserved to be first in line, not last. So every time I earned $1, I kept a portion of it. I didn't spend it. I saved it, even if it was small. In the beginning, I couldn't afford much, but I could afford something, a dime from every dollar. That's 10%. And let me tell you, it's not the amount, it's the habit, the discipline, the message you send to your subconscious when you say, I matter, my future matters. I work too hard to give everything I earn away. When you develop this habit, you begin to build confidence. You start to feel secure, even if it's just a few $100s in savings, because you know something is growing. And soon that 10% becomes something bigger. You start to invest it. You start to earn interest. And then interest starts to earn interest. That's when wealth begins. Not when you make more money, but when you learn to keep more of what you already make. I've seen people double their income and still stay broke because their spending doubled too. Why? Because their habit wasn't to pay themselves. It was to consume. That's a dangerous cycle. More money won't fix poor financial discipline. You fix that first, and then more money becomes a blessing, not a burden. Another thing I realized is that paying yourself first isn't just about saving, it's about priority. You are deciding what matters most. You're telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And when you take control of your finances, something interesting happens. Your life feels less chaotic. You worry less, you sleep better. And that confidence starts to bleed into other areas, your work, your health, your relationships, because discipline is contagious. Win in one area and you start winning in others. Some people say, I'll start saving when I make more. But if you can't save $10 out of $100, what makes you think you'll save $100 out of $1,000? It's never about the amount. It's about proving to yourself that you can delay gratification, that you can plan long-term, that you're not just working to survive, you're working to build something. The greatest benefit of paying yourself first isn't just financial, it's psychological. It shifts you from being reactive to proactive. You stop living paycheck to paycheck and start living plan to plan. And that's a powerful shift because now money isn't controlling you, you're controlling. So I made a rule for myself and I kept it sacred. Before I paid a single bill, before I bought a single thing, I paid myself. It was the foundation of every other money rule I followed. Without it, the rest fall apart. With it, everything else becomes easier. And over time, what started as a small habit became the seed of financial independence. I remember the day I sat down with a pen and paper and wrote out exactly where my money was going. Rent, food, gas, a few dinners out, a couple things I didn't really need but bought anyway. By the time I totaled it up, I realized something shocking. My income wasn't the problem. It was my lack of awareness. I had no budget. I was living reactively, not intentionally. And that was the moment I learned the importance of mastering my budget. You see, money slips away quietly when you're not paying attention. It's not always the big expenses that drain your bank account. It's the little ones, the unnoticed ones, the impulsive ones. $5 here, $10 there, and before you know it, the month is gone and so is your money. I used to think budgeting was restrictive. That had meant saying no to everything I enjoyed. But I learned that budgeting isn't about restriction, it's about direction. It's about telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. I started writing down every dollar I spent, every cup of coffee, every trip to the store, every bill. And what I found was that I had more control than I thought. I didn't need to give up everything. I just needed to become more intentional. I could still enjoy things. I just had to plan for them. That changed everything. I wasn't guessing anymore. I had a plan. When you have a plan, you have peace. Most people think they need to earn more money to get ahead. But in many cases, they just need to manage what they already earn. You can make a lot of money and still be broke if you spend without thinking. And you can make a modest income and build wealth if you manage it wisely. It's not about how much you make. It's about how much you keep and how well you use it. That's where budgeting comes in. It becomes your roadmap, your blueprint. One of the most valuable things I did was to separate my spending into categories: necessities, savings, and desires. Necessities included rent, food, transportation, things I needed to survive. Savings included that 10% I was paying myself first, and desires, that was everything else. Entertainment, eating out, spontaneous spending, and let me tell you, desires are endless. If you don't put a limit on them, they'll consume your entire paycheck. So I gave every category a boundary, not a cage, but a guideline, and those boundaries gave me freedom. I wasn't wondering anymore if I'd have enough at the end of the month. I knew. Budgeting also helped me prepare for unexpected expenses. Life doesn't ask permission before throwing a surprise bill your way. A car repair, a medical need, something breaks at home. Those things happen. But with a budget, I started building an emergency fund. Not much at first, just a little. But that little gave me breathing room, and breathing room reduces stress. When you're constantly one paycheck away from disaster, it's hard to sleep well at night. Budgeting gave me rest, not just financially, but emotionally. It also made future planning possible. I could now see how long it would take to reach a savings goal. I could plan a trip without guilt. I could invest with intention, not hesitation. Budgeting gave me clarity. And clarity creates confidence. If you want to win with money, you have to start with control. Not control over the economy, not control over what others do, just control over yourself. And budgeting is self-control in action. It's one of the strongest financial habits you can develop. Because if you can manage what you have now, you'll be ready for more when it comes. And that's the kind of person wealth respects. When I first began to understand the difference between getting by and building wealth, I came across a principle so simple it almost sounded too easy to work. Pay yourself first. But as I applied it, I discovered it was not only powerful, it was life-changing. Most people don't pay themselves anything. They work 40, 50, sometimes 60 hours a week, and as soon as they receive their paycheck, it disappears. The landlord gets their share, the grocery store gets theirs, the electric company, the phone company, and by the time you get to yourself, there's nothing left. And people wonder why, after working for 30 years, they have nothing to show for it. I decided that if I was going to work that hard, I deserved to be first in line, not last. So every time I earned $1, I kept a portion of it. I didn't spend it, I saved it, even if it was small. In the beginning, I couldn't afford much, but I could afford something. A dime from every dollar. That's 10%. And let me tell you, it's not the amount, it's the habit. The discipline, the message you send to your subconscious when you say, I matter, my future matters. I work too hard to give everything I earn away. When you develop this habit, you begin to build confidence. You start to feel secure, even if it's just a few $100s in savings, because you know something is growing. And soon, that 10% becomes something bigger. You start to invest it. You start to earn interest. And then interest starts to earn interest. That's when wealth begins. Not when you make more money, but when you learn to keep more of what you already make. I've seen people double their income and still stay broke because their spending doubled too. Why? Because their habit wasn't to pay themselves, it was to consume. That's a dangerous cycle. More money won't fix poor financial discipline. You fix that first, and then more money becomes a blessing, not a burden. Another thing I realized is that paying yourself first isn't just about saving, it's about priority. You are deciding what matters most. You're telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And when you take control of your finances, something interesting happens. Your life feels less chaotic. You worry less. You sleep better. And that confidence starts to bleed into other areas, your work, your health, your relationships, because discipline is contagious. Win in one area, and you start winning in others. Some people say, I'll start saving when I make more. But if you can't save $10 out of $100, what makes you think you'll save $100 out of $1,000? It's never about the amount. It's about the mindset. It's about proving to yourself that you can delay gratification, that you can plan long-term, that you're not just working to survive, you're working to build something. The greatest benefit of paying yourself first isn't just financial, it's psychological. It shifts you from being reactive to proactive. You stop living paycheck to paycheck and start living plan to plan. And that's a powerful shift because now money isn't controlling you, you're controlling. So I made a rule for myself and I kept it sacred. Before I paid a single bill, before I bought a single thing, I paid myself. It was the foundation of every other money rule I followed. Without it, the rest fall apart. With it, everything else becomes easier. And over time, what started as a small habit became the seed of financial independence. I used to believe that investing was something only wealthy people did, people who had already made it. I thought you needed a lot of money, special knowledge, or access to some secret financial world. So I delayed it. I told myself I'll invest when I'm earning more or when I have something left over. But time kept passing, and I had nothing working for me. That's when I came to understand something that changed everything. The earlier you invest, the more powerful your money becomes. You don't need a fortune to begin. You just need a decision, and you need time. The truth is, time is the greatest multiplier of wealth. The earlier you start, the longer your money can grow. You could invest a small amount consistently, and with enough time, it can become something significant. But if you wait, even until you feel more ready, you lose the most valuable ingredient in the wealth-building formula: compound growth. I didn't wait to be perfect. I started when I was disciplined enough to save and wise enough to want a better future. In the beginning, I didn't understand the markets. I didn't know about mutual funds or index funds, but I knew how to learn. I listened, I read, I asked questions. I sought out people who were doing it right and copied what worked. And I started small enough that I wasn't scared, but big enough that it meant something. Every month, I made it a habit. Not once in a while, not when I felt like it, but consistently. That's what made the difference. When I saw my money start to grow, it changed my thinking. It wasn't just about how much I had saved. It was about the fact that my money was now working for me, even while I slept. It was earning interest, gaining value, and building my future. And that shift from being a consumer to being an investor gave me a sense of power. For the first time, I wasn't just trading time for money. I was building something that could grow beyond me. I learned to think long term. I wasn't trying to double my money overnight. I wasn't gambling. I was planting. And like any seed, it takes time. Some seasons, the market went down. Some months, the returns were small, but I didn't panic. I stayed the course. I reminded myself that the ups and downs were part of the process. You don't dig up a tree every week to see how it's growing. You water it, you protect it, and you wait. I also discovered that investing isn't just about stocks or real estate. It's about investing in yourself. The best return I ever got came from the books I read, the seminars I attended, the skills I learned. That knowledge helped me make better financial decisions, opened doors to better opportunities, and gave me the confidence to take smart risks. Most people waste decades waiting for the perfect time to invest, not realizing that every year they wait, the cost of delay gets heavier. I wasn't about to let time slip away again. I made it my ally. And once I did, it changed everything. Start early, start small, but start. That's what I'd tell anyone who wants to avoid being broke at 65. Because when you invest with consistency and patience, you're not just buying stocks or property. You're buying freedom. There was a time in my life when I relied solely on one paycheck. It came in every month, and I planned everything around it. My rent, my groceries, my bills, my savings. But deep down, I knew I was walking a tightrope. If that paycheck stopped, everything else would collapse. That thought used to keep me up at night. And that's when I realized if I was going to build a future that was stable and free, I couldn't afford to depend on only one source of income. I needed multiple streams, not just to grow my wealth, but to protect it. I started looking at the time I had and asking myself better questions. How can I use my evenings or weekends? What skills do I already have that could be turned into income? It didn't have to be something big. It just had to be something consistent. I began small. A side project here, a freelance job there. I sold things I didn't need, offered services in areas I knew well, and even started earning small returns from modest investments. At first, it wasn't much, but it was more than I had before. And more importantly, it gave me peace of mind. Having multiple income streams does something powerful. It removes desperation. When one stream slows down, the others keep flowing. You stop living in constant fear of job loss or unexpected bills. You become flexible. You become prepared. It gives you room to breathe, room to plan, and room to grow. And here's something I noticed. Once I started earning money from different sources, my thinking changed. I stopped seeing myself as just an employee. I became an owner. A builder. I wasn't just showing up for a paycheck. I was creating value, offering something the world needed. That shift in identity made me more proactive, more curious, and more committed to growing. It also taught me a lesson in discipline. Managing multiple income sources meant I had to manage my time better, focus more clearly, and avoid distractions. But the payoff was worth it. I was no longer vulnerable to a single point of failure. I wasn't tied to one company, one industry, or one boss. I had options, and options are freedom. Even during economic downturns or tough seasons, I had backup plans. I didn't panic. because I had built something strong. And over time, one of those income streams started to outgrow the rest. That's another lesson. When you give something a chance to grow, it might surprise you. What starts as a side hustle can become your main source, but it never happens if you never start. Now, I'm not saying you need 5 or 10 different jobs, but think about how you can diversify. Can you turn a hobby into income? Can you invest in something that pays dividends? Can you teach, consult, sell, build, write, create? The world is full of opportunity, but most people never explore it because they've been trained to think like employees, not creators. Building multiple streams of income takes effort, but it also builds confidence. You begin to realize you're not trapped. You're not at the mercy of one job, one industry, or one economy. You're in control, and that control adds stability, resilience, and eventually freedom. So don't wait until you're forced to find a second income. Start when you have the chance to build it calmly, with purpose. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't just to make a living. It's to create a life that doesn't fall apart when one piece is taken away. When I began my journey toward financial freedom, one of the most overlooked but powerful decisions I made was choosing who I surrounded myself with. At first, I didn't think it mattered much. I thought financial success was just about numbers, strategy, savings, investing. But over time, I realized something deeper. Your environment shapes your habits, and your habits shape your future. If the people around you are careless with money, living for the weekend, drowning in debt, chances are you'll adopt those patterns without even realizing it. But if you walk with people who think long-term, who budget, invest, grow, your mindset begins to rise to that level. I looked back and noticed how many of my own money mistakes weren't because I didn't know better, but because I followed the crowd. I saw people buying the latest phones, financing new cars they couldn't afford, spending money before it was even earned. And I did the same. Not because I needed those things, but because I didn't want to feel left out. That's the silent power of influence. It pushes you gently until you wake up one day and wonder how you got so far off track. So I made a conscious decision to change my circle. Not by cutting people off completely, but by expanding my world. I started listening to people who were winning with money. I read books by people who had built wealth the right way. Slow, steady, and with integrity. I went to seminars, attended financial literacy classes, joined online communities focused on growth. And slowly, my thinking began to shift. I no longer felt like I had to keep up with appearances. I felt inspired to build something real. Being around people who were financially wise didn't just teach me tactics. It reshaped my mindset. They talked about long-term goals, not just short-term pleasure. They spoke about budgeting like it was a tool for freedom, not a punishment. They celebrated saving, not just spending. And perhaps most importantly, they were honest about mistakes. They didn't pretend to have it all figured out. They shared their failures, their lessons, and how they got back on track. That honesty gave me courage. I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to stay committed. I also learned the power of asking questions. I started having conversations I used to avoid about investments, retirement planning, taxes, passive income. And every time I asked, I learned. The answers were out there, but you have to put yourself in the right rooms to hear them. And when you start speaking the language of wealth building, you attract others who are on the same path. That creates momentum. That creates accountability. Now, this isn't about comparing your journey to someone else's. It's about learning from those who are further ahead and encouraging those who are just beginning. Iron sharpens iron. And in the realm of finances, being around people who are sharp, focused, and wise can sharpen you too. It helps you stay grounded during emotional decisions. It helps you think twice before that impulse buy. It helps you ask, will this move me forward or backward? I've come to believe that one of the most important investments you'll ever make is in your environment. Who you listen to matters. Who you take advice from matters. Because over time, the people around you influence your thinking, your habits, and eventually your results. Choose wisely. Because wealth is not just about money, it's about mindset. And the right circle will help you protect both.